People laughed. Cameras flashed. A full glass of deep red wine spilled slowly, deliberately, down the front of a woman's simple black dress. The crowd roared with delight, phones raised high, recording every second of the humiliation. They saw only a clumsy outsider who had wandered into the wrong room. They had no idea the woman they were mocking, the woman they were about to drown in public shame, was the undercover billionaire whose single decision could end every career in that ballroom. But what happened next left the entire room speechless. The night had started like a dream. Crystal chandeliers poured golden light over marble floors. Soft jazz drifted through the air, mingling with the scent of rare orchids and expensive perfume. This was the official launch party for Apex Dynamics, the tech company everyone in the industry was watching. Investors in tailored tuxedos, executives in shimmering gowns, influencers dripping diamonds, every important name had fought for an invitation. Yet among all that glittering wealth stood one woman who looked completely out of place. A modest knee-length black dress. Flat shoes. No jewelry except a thin silver watch. Unassuming glasses. Auburn hair pulled into a low, practical knot. To the untrained eye she looked like catering staff who had lost her way. Her name tag read only Rose, guest. That was all they needed to know. Or so they thought. In truth, Rose Reese was worth $7.5 billion. She owned Apex Dynamics outright through a web of holding companies no one had ever connected to her name. Tonight she had come in disguise for one reason, to watch. To listen. To discover whether the people she had placed in charge still remembered that power was a privilege, not a weapon. And then everything went out of control. At the heart of the celebration stood Victor Hale and Elena Voss, the public faces of Apex Dynamics. Victor wore his confidence like cologne, hair slicked back, smile sharp enough to cut glass. Elena's silver gown caught every spotlight as she laughed at her own jokes. They were the perfect founders on camera, visionary, charismatic, unstoppable. Behind the scenes, whispers said something darker. Victor's gaze swept the room and landed on Rose. He leaned toward Elena and murmured something that made her throw her head back in cruel laughter. Rose heard the words clearly. Who invited the thrift store refugee? She looks like she's here to clear plates. Rose pretended not to hear. She had heard worse in her life. She stayed still, plate of untouched appetizers in hand, watching. Victor decided the joke needed an audience. He strolled over, wine glass held loosely, the liquid catching the light like blood. Hey, you, he called loudly enough for the nearest circle to turn. You're blocking the view. VIPs only on this side. Rose stepped aside without a word. The movement should have ended it. It didn't. Victor took one more step, swayed theatrically, and tipped the entire contents of his glass down the front of her dress. Deep red exploded across black fabric, running in thick rivulets to the floor. The room erupted. Phones rose like a second time. Laughter crashed like waves. Elena clapped a manicured hand over her mouth in mock horror. Oh dear, she cooed, voice carrying. Someone fetch a mop. She must be used to cleaning up other people's messes. Flash. 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 The moment was immortalized from 20 angles. Rose looked down at the spreading stain, then up at the circle of smiling faces. She felt the old, familiar burn of humiliation, the same burn that had once driven a hungry teenager to code through the night in a freezing garage. She breathed in, breathed out, and said nothing. Because silence, she had learned long ago, was sometimes the sharpest blade of all. A path opened in the crowd. A young woman hurried forward, freckles standing out against pale cheeks, ponytail swinging. She clutched a fistful of napkins. Here, let me help, she whispered urgently, dabbing at the wine. I'm so sorry. They do this to everyone they think doesn't matter. Please don't let them make you feel small. Her name badge read Emma Lark, junior developer. Rose met her eyes and saw only kindness, no camera, no agenda. Thank you, Emma, she said softly. What do you do here? Emma gave a sad little laugh. lowest rung. They keep telling me I'm too quiet to ever amount to anything. She kept blotting the stain even though it was hopeless. I almost handed in my resignation last week after they screamed at me for suggesting we improve employee mental health resources. Rose felt something settle inside her chest, something between gratitude and resolve. She had seen enough. On stage, Victor raised a fresh glass, ready for his victory toast. The lights dimmed dramatically. The event MC bounded up the steps, beaming. Ladies and gentlemen, the moment we've all been waiting for. Please welcome the enigmatic majority owner of Apex Dynamics, the visionary who made tonight possible. The double doors at the far end remained closed. The room swiveled expectantly. Whispers rippled. Victor's smile widened. He loved mystery almost as much as he loved attention. But no one entered. Because the owner was already there. Rose removed her glasses, folded them, and slipped them into her pocket. She reached back, pulled the pins from her hair, and let thick auburn waves fall past her shoulders. Then she walked forward through the parted crowd as though she owned the floor itself, because she did. Victor's smirk faltered. Security, he snapped, remove this person. The MC looked horrified. Sir, that is Rose Reese. A glass slipped from someone's hand and shattered. Rose reached the bottom step of the stage and climbed without hurry. Every eye followed. She took the microphone from the stunned MC. Good evening, she said, voice calm, clear, carrying to the farthest corner. Some of you spilled wine on me tonight. Some of you laughed. All of you judged a woman by the price of her dress. She looked directly at Victor and Elena. I came in disguise for one reason, to see the heart of the company I built. Tonight that heart revealed itself, and it is rotten. Victor tried to speak. Nothing came out. Rose turned to Emma, who still stood frozen near the appetizer table, napkins clutched in shaking hands. Miss Lark, your kindness in a room full of cruelty is the only thing that felt real tonight. Effective immediately, you are promoted to Director of Operations. Emma's mouth opened, but no sound escaped. Tears welled. Rose faced the founders again. Victor Hale. Elena Voss. You poured wine on someone you believed had no power. Tonight you poured away your own. By morning your contracts will be terminated. This company will be led by people who understand that respect is not optional. Security appeared as if conjured. 2 guards in quiet black suits flanked the stage. Victor found his voice at last. This is insane. We built Apex. No, Rose said simply. I did. You only managed it for a while. The room watched in stunned silence as Victor and Elena were escorted out, Elena's heels clicking frantic protests against marble, Victor's face the color of ash. Rose placed the microphone back on its stand. She walked down the steps, through the parted sea of ashamed elites, and paused beside Emma. The younger woman looked up, eyes shining. Why didn't you stop them sooner? Why let them humiliate you? Rose smiled, gentle and fierce at once. Because people always show you exactly who they are when they think you're a nobody. She continued toward the exit. Behind her, the ballroom remained frozen, the only sound the soft click of her flat shoes against the floor and the distant clink of a dropped glass finally hitting the ground. Outside, the night air was cool against the wine-stained fabric. Rose drew a deep breath and allowed herself one small, satisfied smile. The reckoning had only beginning. But to understand why a billionaire would walk into her own party dressed as the least important person in the room, why she would invite cruelty just to measure its depth, you have to go back to the beginning. Back to a small town, a girl with nothing but a second-hand laptop and a promise she made to herself the day the world decided she was worthless. And that story starts long before tonight. The small town of Willow Creek nestled in the rolling hills of rural Oregon, a place where everyone knew everyone's business and dreams rarely stretched beyond the county line. It was here, 25 years ago, that Rose Reese first learned the sharp edges of the world. She was 12 when the accident took her parents, a slick road and a logging truck colliding in the dead of night. One moment she had a family, the next she was alone in a drafty foster home, staring at a ceiling cracked like her future. The foster system shuffled her like a bad hand of cards. 3 homes in as many years, each one teaching her a new lesson in invisibility. In the first, she was the extra mouth to feed, ignored unless chores needed doing. She scrubbed floors until her knees ached, learning that silence bought peace. The second home was louder, with a foster father whose temper flared like summer wildfires. There, she discovered books as escape, hiding in the local library after school, devouring stories of inventors and entrepreneurs who built worlds from nothing. By the third placement, she had hardened, her sharp green eyes missing nothing, her auburn hair often tied back to keep it out of the way while she worked. Odd jobs became her lifeline. At 14, she mowed lawns for the neighbors, saving every penny in a jar under her bed. By 16, she waited tables at the diner on Main Street, enduring leers from truckers and snide comments from regulars who pitied the poor orphan girl. "You'll never amount to much without connections," one old-timer told her once, chuckling as he left a nickel tip. Rose smiled politely, but inside, those words fueled a fire. She would prove them wrong. Not with anger, but with action. Nights were for dreaming bigger. In the garage of her final foster home, a cluttered space smelling of oil and dust, she found an old computer discarded by the family. It was clunky, outdated, but it worked. She taught herself coding from library books and free online tutorials accessed during her breaks at school. Her first program was simple, an app to track lawn mowing schedules for her clients. It organized routes, reminded her of payments, even suggested upsells like weeding. When a neighbor saw it and asked for a copy, she charged $5. That spark ignited something irreversible. By 18, she aged out of the system with a high school diploma, a backpack of clothes, and $300 from her jobs. She moved into a tiny apartment above the diner, working double shifts while coding in stolen hours. Her app evolved into a full-fledged tool for small businesses, managing inventories and customer lists. She called it Baselink, uploaded it to an online marketplace, and watched as downloads trickled in. First 10, then 100. Revenue followed, enough to quit the diner and focus full-time. That garage-born spark became her foundation. But it was the judgments, the dismissals, that shaped her empire's core. "People see what they want," she told herself back then. "But I'll build something where character matters more than appearance." Ethical practices weren't just a policy, they were her vow. No exploitation, no shortcuts. Hire based on merit and kindness, not connections. Invest in people, not just profits. As Baselink grew, she acquired her first failing startup, turning it around by fostering a culture of respect. Software led to renewable energy ventures, where she insisted on fair labor in solar panel production. E-commerce followed, with platforms prioritizing small sellers over corporate giants. Continent by continent, her businesses expanded, always anonymous, always ethical. In the present, Rose sat in the back of her understated sedan, the city lights of Seattle blurring past the tinted windows. The party was hours behind her, but the wine stain on her dress had dried stiff, a reminder of the night's revelations. She pulled out her phone and dialed her assistant, Liam, a trusted confidant who handled the veil between her public anonymity and private power. "Liam," she said when he answered, "initiate the reviews on Hale and Voss. Full audit. Contracts, communications, everything." "Already started, Ms. Reese," Liam replied, his voice steady as always. "Preliminary flags on expense reports. Overages that don't add up. I'll have a summary by dawn." Rose leaned back, closing her eyes. The post-party reflection hit her like waves. Why did she still do this? Disguise herself, invite the mockery? Because the past never fully faded. Every snicker tonight echoed those diner taunts, reinforcing why her empire demanded integrity. She thought of Emma Lark, the junior developer whose simple act of kindness had shone like a beacon. Emma deserved better than the toxic environment Victor and Elena had cultivated. Back in Willow Creek, Rose's motivations crystallized during her first big break. Baselink hit 1,000 users, and she used the profits to buy out a local tech shop on the verge of bankruptcy. The owner, an elderly man dismissed by banks as too old, became her first mentor. He taught her circuits, she taught him apps. Together, they rebuilt the business ethically, paying workers fairly, rejecting shady deals. Success without soul is failure, he told her. When he passed, she vowed to carry that forward. Her empire grew to billions, but anonymity protected her from the sycophants. Disguises let her test the waters, ensuring no rot set in. Her phone vibrated. A message from Liam, rumors circulating internally at Apex. Anonymous employee forum posts about budget cuts masking personal perks for execs. Rose frowned. Corruption. It fit the pattern. Victor and Elena's arrogance at the party wasn't isolated, it was symptomatic. She replied, dig deeper. Cross-reference with financials. Meanwhile, across town in a sleek loft overlooking the bay, Victor Hale paced furiously. Elena Voss lounged on a leather couch, scrolling her phone with faint calm. This can't be real, Victor muttered, running a hand through his slicked hair. Who is this Rose Reese? We need damage control. Elena's predatory smile twisted. I've got contacts on the board. We'll spin this as a misunderstanding. Promote a loyalist, bury the promotion for that mousy developer. Victor nodded, scheming. And the finances? If she audits, we'll adjust the books. Make it look like honest errors. Their positions hung by a thread, but they weren't going down without a fight. Years of skimming perks, inflating expenses for personal trips, favoring cronies, it had seemed harmless in the glow of success. Now, it threatened everything. Emma Lark, in her modest apartment, stared at the ceiling much like young Rose once had. The promotion replayed in her mind, a whirlwind of shock and hope. She had persevered at Apex despite the mistreatment, overlooked ideas, belittling meetings, Victor's shouts when she pushed for better team support. Born in a working-class family, Emma had coded her way through community college, landing the junior role through sheer grit. Too quiet, they said. But quiet didn't mean weak. Tonight's kindness to the outsider had been instinct, born from her own scars of being undervalued. Now, director? It felt like a dream, but whispers from colleagues warned of backlash. Victor's allies were already murmuring. Rose's reflection deepened as the car pulled into her secluded estate. She changed out of the stained dress, slipping into comfortable sweats, and opened her laptop. Liam's preliminary report arrived, mismatched invoices, unauthorized bonuses to execs, employee complaints buried. Financial mismanagement stared back, preliminary but damning. Tension coiled in her gut. This wasn't just poor leadership, it was theft from the company she had nurtured. She recalled her first billion-dollar deal, acquiring a renewable energy firm plagued by corruption. She had gone undercover then too, as a janitor, uncovering embezzlement that saved thousands of jobs. Ethics weren't optional, they were the bedrock. Apex deserved the same scrutiny. By midnight, the evidence mounted. A leaked email chain showed Victor approving cuts to employee welfare while upgrading his office. Rose's decision crystallized. She couldn't trust remote audits alone. She needed eyes inside. Liam, she texted, prepare credentials. I'm going in as an intern tomorrow. The past had taught her well, to root out shadows, you had to walk among them. The elevator doors slid open on the 32nd floor of Apex Dynamics at exactly 8:17 a.m., and a nervous 20-something in a plain gray skirt and white blouse stepped out clutching a cheap canvas tote. Her badge read Riley Quinn, temporary data entry intern. No one gave her a second glance. That was precisely the point. Rose had chosen the name Riley because it sounded forgettable, the outfit because it whispered invisibility. Her auburn hair was twisted into a messy knot held by a single pencil. The glasses were thicker this time, slightly crooked, the kind that made people look away rather than engage. Liam had worked through the night to plant her credentials in the system, complete with glowing but generic references from a defunct startup in Idaho. By the time the first real employees arrived, Riley Quinn officially existed. She was assigned to the open-plan bullpen on the east side, a sea of glass cubicles and standing desks where the junior developers and support staff lived. The air smelled of burnt coffee and anxiety. Rose kept her shoulders rounded, her eyes lowered, and began the slow, deliberate art of becoming scenery. Within an hour she had mapped the mood of the floor. Whispers about last night's party drifted like smoke. Some people spoke of the crazy billionaire in hushed awe, others in skeptical snickers. Most, though, spoke of fear. Victor and Elena had arrived at 7, earlier than usual, and the temperature in the building had dropped 10 degrees. At 9:05 the storm broke. Victor strode through the bullpen flanked by 2 senior managers, Elena a half-step behind in knife-sharp heels. He stopped at a young man's desk, a coder named Patel who had once pitched an open-source integration that could have saved the company 6 figures. "You're off the Orion project," Victor announced without greeting. "Effective immediately. Pack your personal items." Patel blinked, stunned. "But the demo is in 2 weeks. I've been leading the back end." Victor's smile was thin. "Exactly. We need fresh blood. You're being moved to maintenance tickets. Permanently." The demotion was delivered loud enough for 20 cubicles to hear. No one spoke. Head stayed down. Rose felt the familiar twist in her stomach, the same twist she had felt at 16 when the diner manager docked her pay for a broken plate she hadn't touched. She typed nonsense into her dummy spreadsheet and listened. Elena added her own flourish 10 minutes later. She summoned a marketing assistant, a bright woman named Sue Jean, into the glass-walled conference room everyone called the aquarium. Through the blinds Rose watched Elena tear apart Sue Jean's campaign proposal with surgical cruelty. "This is juvenile," Elena sneered, loud enough for the sound to carry. "Did you design it on your phone during lunch? Honestly, if this is the best we have, maybe we should outsource creativity to kindergartners." Sue Jean left the aquarium with red eyes and shaking hands. No one comforted her. By noon Rose had catalogued a dozen small wounds, ignored expense reports for medical leave, a pregnancy accommodation request buried in HR, a promising AI ethics proposal dismissed because it wasn't aggressive enough for investors. The rot was deeper than arrogance. It was policy. She was refilling her water bottle at the kitchenette when she first saw Emma Lark in daylight. Emma looked different in office lighting, ponytail replaced by a neat braid, eyes still wide with the shock of sudden power. She wore a navy blazer that didn't quite fit, probably borrowed, and carried a tablet like a shield. 2 senior developers, men who had been Victor's loudest cheerleaders at the party, blocked her path. "You're director now," one asked, voice syrupy sweet. "That's cute. Just don't get in our way on the Orion timeline, sweetheart." Emma lifted her chin. "The timeline is being revised for employee bandwidth. Ms. Reese's orders." The men exchanged smirks. "Sure. Whatever the mystery lady wants. Hope you enjoy your 15 minutes. Emma walked away without answering, but Rose saw the tremor in her fingers. The resistance had already begun. At 2 p.m. Rose was tasked with digitizing old expense receipts, a mind-numbing job that gave her legitimate access to the shared filing room. She worked slowly, ears open. That was when Harlan Drake appeared. Drake was a board member in his late 50s, silver hair, shark smile, the kind of man who collected companies like cufflinks. He had been Victor's champion from the beginning, the one who had convinced Rose's holding company to let the flashy duo stay on after the acquisition. He cornered Victor near the printers. "We need to move fast," Drake muttered, thinking the hum of machines covered his voice. It didn't. "Reese is a ghost. No public photos, no interviews. That makes her vulnerable. If we can prove instability at the top, we trigger the morality clause and force a buyout at depressed valuation." Victor's reply was a low growl. "She humiliated us. I'm not rolling over." "Good," Drake said. "Because I have buyers lined up. We doctor the quarterlies, leak a narrative about erratic ownership, and cash out before anyone digs deeper. Elena's already moving funds into the Cayman's account. Rose's pulse stayed even, but every word etched itself into memory. She kept her head down, sliding receipts into the scanner as if she heard nothing. By 4 o'clock she had volunteered to deliver a stack of printed reports to the executive floor, another invisible intern task. She rode the elevator alone, heart steady, rehearsing the bored expression she would need. The executive corridor was quieter, carpet muffling footsteps. Victor's office door stood ajar. Inside, Elena paced while Victor typed furiously at his computer. "We push the numbers tonight," Elena was saying. "Backdate the vendor payments, inflate the burn rate. By the time her auditors arrive, the books will show Apex bleeding cash. She'll have to sell or watch it tank." Victor nodded. "And the Lark girl? We frame her for the discrepancies. New director, sudden access, sloppy mistakes. Perfect scapegoat." Rose's grip tightened on the reports. Emma. They were willing to destroy an innocent woman to save themselves. She stepped back silently, but her shoe caught the edge of a floor mat. The softest scrape. Elena's head snapped toward the door. "Who's there?" Rose melted into the copy alcove, heart hammering now. She pressed herself against the wall as Elena's heels clicked closer. A shadow fell across the carpet. For 5 endless seconds Rose held her breath. Then Victor's voice, impatient. "Leave it. We're on a deadline." The heels retreated. The door clicked shut. Rose exhaled silently and slipped back into the elevator. Her reflection stared back at her in the mirrored walls, messy knot, crooked glasses, cheap blouse. No one important. Exactly as planned. But the game had changed. This was no longer about arrogance or hurt feelings. They were planning fraud, and they were planning to hang Emma for it. As the elevator descended, Rose made her choice. She could end this with one phone call, have security drag them out in handcuffs by morning. But evidence obtained as Riley Quinn would not hold up in court. She needed more. She needed to be inside when the falsified reports were created. The doors opened on the bullpen. Emma stood by the coffee machine, looking lost. Their eyes met across the room. Emma offered a small, uncertain smile, the kind that asked, "Is this real?" Rose smiled back, gentle, reassuring, and entirely calculated. Tomorrow she would dig deeper. Tomorrow Riley Quinn would become indispensable. Tonight she sent Liam a single encrypted message. "Stay the audits. I'm going darker." The next morning dawned gray over the city, rain pattering against the windows of Apex Dynamics like impatient fingers. Rose arrived early as Riley Quinn, her intern badge swinging, a thermos of cheap instant coffee in hand to complete the image of the eager newcomer. She settled into her cubicle and began the day's drudgery, sorting digital files that no one else wanted to touch. But her eyes scanned the room constantly, noting the clusters of whispers, the averted gazes when executives passed. By mid-morning Emma appeared on the floor, clipboard in hand, touring the bullpen as part of her new duties. She stopped at several desks, asking quiet questions about workloads and suggestions. The responses were polite but guarded, especially from Victor's loyalists. When she reached Rose's station, their eyes met again, and Emma paused. "You're the new intern, right? Riley?" Emma asked, her freckled face softening into a genuine smile. "I saw you yesterday. Thanks for not staring like everyone else." Rose returned the smile, keeping her voice hesitant and young. "No problem. This place seems intense. Congrats on the promotion, by the way." "That's huge." Emma glanced around and lowered her voice. "Huge and terrifying. Want to grab lunch later? I could use a friendly face who isn't plotting my downfall." The invitation was casual, but Rose sensed the vulnerability beneath it. She nodded. "Sure. I'd like that." Lunch was in the company cafeteria, a sterile space with fluorescent lights and plastic trays. They chose a corner table away from the crowds. Emma picked at a salad while Rose munched on a sandwich, listening as Emma opened up. "I've dreamed of leading a team like this since college," Emma confessed, her ponytail bobbing as she gestured. Grew up in a tiny apartment in Portland, single mom working 2 jobs. I coded on a library computer after school, building silly games to escape. But dreams don't pay bills, so I took this junior role thinking it'd be a stepping stone. Instead, it's been a minefield. Victor and Elena, they crush ideas if they don't fit their vision. I pitched a wellness program last month, and they laughed me out of the room. Rose leaned in, her intern facade hiding the surge of empathy. Emma's story mirrored her own early struggles so closely it ached. That sounds rough. Why stay? Emma shrugged, but her eyes lit with quiet fire. Because I believe in what Apex could be. Tech that helps people, not just lines pockets. And now, with this chance, I won't waste it. Even if half the floor thinks I'm a fluke. The words unknowingly inspired Rose, reigniting memories of her own defiant climbs. She offered a tentative smile. You sound like someone who'll change things. Maybe I can help. I'm good with data if you need an extra hand. Emma's gratitude was immediate. Really? That would be amazing. Come by my office after lunch. We can start small. As they talked, a subtle dynamic took root, mentor-mentee in disguise. Rose guided Emma's thoughts gently, suggesting ways to rally support without revealing her expertise. Emma, in turn, confided more, her trust building like a bridge over uncertain waters. There was no romance in it, only the quiet spark of shared resilience, Emma seeing in Riley a kindred spirit, Rose seeing in Emma the leader she had hoped to find. Back at her desk, Rose's mind wandered to her empire, the vast network that made such infiltrations possible. It had started with software, Baselink evolving into a suite of tools that powered small businesses worldwide. But her first major acquisition came 5 years after launch, a struggling renewable energy firm in California called SunForge. She flashed back to that day, sitting in a dusty boardroom as a 23-year-old nobody, disguised as a consultant to assess the rot. The CEO had been embezzling, much like Victor now, but Rose bought it out anonymously, reformed the culture, and turned it profitable by prioritizing fair wages and green innovations. Solar panels for underserved communities, wind tech that minimized wildlife impact, it became her ethical flagship, generating billions while saving the planet 1 kilowatt at a time. From there, e-commerce beckoned. She acquired MarketWeave, a failing online platform, in a midnight deal after going undercover as a vendor. The flashbacks played like a montage, haggling in virtual forums, spotting the predatory fees that drove sellers away. She rebuilt it with transparent algorithms, empowering artisans over corporations. Now her holdings spanned continents, software hubs in Europe, energy plants in Asia, e-commerce warehouses in South America. All tied by one thread, people first. Acquisitions weren't conquests, they were rescues, each one a testament to the girl who had coded her way out of nothing. But shadows loomed. By afternoon, the smear campaign began subtly. Rose overheard it first in the break room, 2 developers murmuring about an anonymous email blast. Says the owner is unstable, hiding because she's dodging taxes or something. Victor forwarded it to the board. Rose checked her secure phone under the desk. Liam had intercepted the digital trail, Elena's doing, planting stories on industry forums and leaking to gossip sites. Mysterious Reese, genius or fraud, one headline read. They were painting her as a recluse with hidden agendas, hoping to erode board confidence and force a sale. The thriller elements escalated that evening. As Rose left the building, blending into the commuter crowd, her phone buzzed with an unknown number. The message was simple, we know you're watching. Back off or the empire falls. She froze on the sidewalk, rain soaking her thin jacket. Anonymous threats. This hinted at deeper betrayal, who knew enough to target her personally? Not just Victor and Elena, someone inside her circle, perhaps. Liam's reply came fast, tracing now. No hits yet. The tension built through the night. Rose paced her estate, flashbacks interleaving with present fears. Acquiring her first e-commerce giant had come with threats too, rival CEOs sending veiled warnings. She had outmaneuvered them by staying hidden, turning anonymity into armor. But this felt personal, a knife aimed at her veiled life. The next day deepened the alliance. Emma pulled Rose into her office for intern tasks, but it quickly became strategy sessions. I feel like I'm drowning, Emma admitted, showing spreadsheets of resisted reforms. They cut benefits last quarter to fund exec bonuses. How do I fix that? Rose, as Riley, suggested audits without tipping her hand. Their conversations grew warmer, Emma sharing childhood sketches of dream apps, Rose offering advice that felt like echoes of her own path. The mentor-mentee bond solidified. Emma looked to Riley for reassurance, unaware she was drawing wisdom from the source. Victor and Elena's campaign ramped up. Rose caught Elena in the hallway, phone pressed to her ear, leak more. Say Reese is a myth, a front for foreign investors. The board was stirring, Drake's influence spread doubt. Then came the anonymous envelope in Rose's home mailbox that night, clippings of the smears, with a handwritten note, your secrets aren't safe. Sell or suffer. Betrayal deepened. Liam traced it to a post office near Apex. An inside job. By week's end, Rose uncovered the embezzlement evidence. Working late as Riley, she volunteered for overtime filing and accessed a restricted drive through a forgotten backdoor Liam had planted. There it was, altered ledgers showing millions siphoned to offshore accounts, tied to Victor, Elena, and Drake. Fake vendors, inflated contracts, the proof was ironclad. She copied it to a secure drive, heart pounding. This was the smoking gun. But confrontation now would blow her cover too soon. She needed allies inside, people like Emma, to ensure the takedown stuck. Rose decided then, time to rally. She would confide in Emma carefully, test the waters, and build a front against the rot. The threats hinted at more players, she couldn't face them alone. As she left the office that night, rain still falling, she texted Liam, gather the board quietly. And watch for tails. We're moving. The rain had eased to a misty drizzle by the time Rose reached her estate, but the chill lingered in her bones as she stepped inside. She shed the intern's damp jacket and moved to her secure office, a room lined with encrypted servers and multiple screens displaying feeds from her global operations. Liam's response to her text came swiftly, board alerted. Discreet meeting scheduled for tomorrow evening. Tails negative so far. She nodded to herself and initiated the remote audit. From her perch, she accessed Apex's backend through a shadow network Liam had mirrored overnight. Spreadsheets unfurled on her screens, transaction logs, payroll data, vendor contracts. While Riley Quinn typed mundane entries at the office by day, Rose Reese dissected the company's veins by night. Discrepancies glowed like embers, a consulting fee wired to a shell company in Panama, matching Drake's travel dates, petty cash withdrawals spiking during Elena's shopping sprees. It was careful work, cross-referencing against public records without tripping alerts. She flagged anomalies for deeper dives, her disguise intact, the dual life a tightrope she walked with practiced ease. The following day brought the first thrilling sequence of her on-site probe. As Riley, she volunteered for after-hours inventory in the server room, a dim basement space humming with machines. The guard nodded her through, bored by the unassuming intern. Alone amid the blinking lights, she slipped a custom USB from her tote into a maintenance port. The device, designed by her own engineers, performed an ethical hack, no data theft, just a passive scan for unauthorized access logs. It revealed backdoor entries from Victor's IP, timestamps aligning with altered reports. Her heart raced as she pocketed the drive, footsteps echoing in the hall above. She ducked behind a rack as a janitor passed, the close shave sharpening her focus. That evening, back home, she sifted the data. More threads emerged, employee testimonials she had begun collecting covertly. During lunch breaks, Riley struck up conversations in the smoker's alley or the overlooked stairwells. Rough day, she asked a veteran tester named Carlos, who had been demoted after questioning budget cuts. You have no idea, he muttered, glancing over his shoulder. I flagged a bug in the AI core that could leak user data. Elena shut it down, said it was not a priority. Now I'm on bug fixes forever. Rose noted it all in encrypted notes, gathering stories like ammunition. A designer shared how her maternity leave request vanished from HR systems. A programmer confessed to quitting soon after Victor berated him publicly for a minor code error. These were the human costs. The web of deceit spun not just from greed but from indifference. Victor and Elena, meanwhile, escalated their sabotage. By midweek, errors cropped up in Emma's new operational reports, mismatched figures in the quarterly projections, typos and budget allocations that made her look incompetent. Rose spotted the pattern during a team meeting where Victor presented the glitches with feigned concern. Victor and Elena, meanwhile, escalated their sabotage. By midweek, errors cropped up in Emma's new operational reports, mismatched figures in the quarterly projections, typos and budget allocations that made her look incompetent. Rose spotted the pattern during a team meeting where Victor presented the glitches with feigned concern. "Director Lark," he said smoothly, projecting the doctored slides, "these discrepancies could cost us investor trust." "Care to explain?" Emma flushed, scanning the data. "This isn't what I submitted." The numbers were verified. Elena's smile was venomous. Perhaps the promotion was too much too soon. The room shifted uncomfortably. Rose, seated in the back as Riley, felt the injustice burn. She intervened covertly that afternoon, slipping into the shared drive during a coffee run. Using her scanned logs, she traced the edits to Elena's assistant, a planted change at 2 a.m. With a few keystrokes, she restored the originals and appended metadata showing the tampering. By evening, Emma received an anonymous tip via internal chat: "Check revision history. You're clean." Emma confronted the issue in a follow-up email, exposing the small lies without accusing outright. Victor's response was curt, but the frame job faltered, buying Emma time. Rose watched from afar, her protection unseen, the themes of her life weaving through her thoughts. In quiet moments, as she navigated the office shadows, Rose reflected on her rise from poverty. The Willow Creek Diner shifts, the foster home's cold indifference, they had taught her that power unchecked bred cruelty. She remembered her first acquisition, Sun Forge, where she had posed as a temp to uncover similar fraud. Poverty had been her forge, hammering resilience into her core. "You build an empire not to escape the bottom," she had told herself then, but to lift others up. These reflections fueled her now, turning investigation into mission. Apex wasn't just an asset, it was lives, dreams like Emma's, fragile against the web of deceit. The twist arrived Thursday night. Rose's secure line rang as she analyzed more audit trails at home. The caller ID showed a name from her past: Elias Grant, the elderly mentor from her first tech shop buyout. "Elias," she answered warmly. "It's been years." His voice was frail but urgent. "Rose, I hear whispers in the old circles. Rivals eyeing Apex. Tech giants like Vortex Systems. They're circling, feeding info to your insiders. Be careful, this isn't just internal rot. It's a takeover play." Rose's grip tightened on the phone. Vortex, a ruthless competitor known for hostile acquisitions, stripping companies for parts. Elias's warning added layers: Drake's buyers weren't random, they were Vortex proxies. Deeper betrayal, industry sharks smelling blood. She thanked him, mind racing. The web thickened, her disguise more vital than ever. Friday brought the close call. Rose, as Riley, stayed late to organize archives in the executive wing. She snuck into Drake's vacant office, heart pounding, and rifled through unlocked drawers for hard copies of the offshore transfers. A memo caught her eye: Vortex NDA, Apex valuation. Footsteps approached. Elena's voice, on a call: "Yes, the intern's been nosy. Keep an eye." Rose shoved the memo back and ducked under the desk as the door opened. Elena entered, heels clicking, scanning the room. "Someone's been here." "The chair's warm." Rose held her breath, inches from Elena's legs. The executive paused, suspicion thick in the air. Then Elena's phone buzzed. "What? The board's calling an emergency?" "Fine, I'm coming." The door closed. Rose waited 5 agonizing minutes before emerging, slipping out a side exit. Elena suspected the intern. The noose tightened. The suspicion in Elena's eyes lingered like a shadow as Rose navigated the weekend, her disguise feeling heavier with each passing hour. By Monday morning, the office buzzed with an undercurrent of unease, whispers threading through the bullpen like invisible wires. Rose arrived as Riley Quinn, her messy knot and crooked glasses in place, but she moved with heightened caution, avoiding the executive floor unless absolutely necessary. That afternoon, the escalating conflicts ignited. Victor and Elena called an emergency crisis meeting in the largest conference room, pulling in their inner circle of loyalists. Rose learned of it through overheard snippets in the kitchenette, where 2 assistants gossiped about the war room session. She volunteered to deliver fresh coffee trays, her intern status granting her entry as little more than furniture. Inside, the air was thick with tension. Victor stood at the head of the table, sleeves rolled up, projecting a holographic chart of share distributions. Elena paced, her heels punctuating each point. Drake joined via video link, his silver hair framed against a backdrop of luxury. "We can't wait for Reese to strike," Victor declared, slamming a fist on the table. "We buy out minority shares from sympathetic holders. Use the slush fund to front it. Once we control 30%, we force a vote on leadership." Elena nodded, eyes gleaming. "And sabotage the Orion project rollout. Delay the AI beta with planted bugs. Make it look like incompetence under the new regime. Investors will panic, stock dips, we scoop up more at bargain prices." Drake's voice crackled through the speakers. "Vortex is ready to back us. They'll provide the capital for the buyout in exchange for tech exclusivity post-takeover." Rose set down the trays quietly, her face blank, but her mind catalogued every detail. As she exited, she palmed a discarded sticky note from the table's edge, a scribbled list of target shareholders. Back at her desk, she photographed it and sent it encrypted to Liam. Subtle sabotage began that evening. Using her remote access, she alerted those shareholders anonymously through spoofed emails, warning of impending fraud investigations at Apex. By morning, 2 had pulled back, citing sudden concerns. At the office, she rallied supportive staff discreetly, starting with Carlos and Sue Jean in the stairwell. "Heard the meeting was intense," she murmured. "If reforms are coming, we should document the good ideas they've ignored." They nodded warily, and soon a small network formed, quiet emails sharing testimonials, a shared drive of overlooked proposals. Rose guided it without leading, planting seeds of unity against the old guard. Emma's role deepened amid the fray. She pushed forward with reforms, announcing in a floor-wide memo, extended mental health days, reinstated benefits, and open forums for ideas. But clashes erupted immediately. In a department huddle, one of Victor's holdouts, a burly project manager named Kent, openly defied her. "These changes will tank productivity," he barked. "We're not a daycare." Emma stood firm, her braid swinging as she countered with data. "Productivity rises with supported teams. This isn't optional." The holdouts grumbled, but Emma's quiet resolve won over a few neutrals, her implementation clashing like sparks against stone. As Rose observed, flashbacks pulled her to her first billion-dollar deal, the acquisition of EcoStream, a renewable energy conglomerate teetering on collapse. She had been 26, still anonymous, posing as a low-level analyst to infiltrate their headquarters. The CEO had been plotting a similar buyout, sabotaging projects to devalue the company for his gain. Rose remembered the late-night boardroom where she uncovered the scheme, her values crystallizing in the confrontation. "Wealth without integrity is dust," she had whispered to herself, emphasizing ethical turnarounds over quick profits. That deal had set her empire's tone, acquire to uplift, not exploit. Now, watching Emma battle holdouts, Rose saw echoes of her younger self, the values she cherished tested anew. Action surged with the corporate espionage element. That Tuesday, Rose tailed Victor discreetly after lunch, her intern errands providing cover. He met a sleek-suited representative from Vortex Systems in a nearby cafe, their conversation caught in fragments through the window. We approach quietly, the rep said, sliding a folder. Fund the sabotage, guarantee the IP transfer. Victor pocketed it with a nod. Rose snapped photos from across the street, her pulse quickening as a passerby nearly bumped her. The rival firm's involvement confirmed Elias's warning. This was no isolated greed but a coordinated assault on her holdings. Personal doubts crept in during quieter moments. As Riley, Rose felt the toll of the disguise mounting. Sleepless nights juggling audits and office drudgery left her exhausted, her auburn hair dull under the knot, her sharp green eyes shadowed. In the bathroom mirror one afternoon, she stared at the crooked glasses and wondered, how long could she sustain this? The anonymity that protected her now isolated her, the weight of secrets pressing like the foster home's ceilings. Is the empire worth the solitude? She reflected, flashbacks to Willow Creek's lonely garage nights blending with present fatigue. But doubt fueled determination. She had risen from nothing before, and she would not let Apex fall. The climax built to a public confrontation that Friday. In the packed auditorium for the weekly all-hands, Victor took the stage uninvited, his charm masking venom. Recent changes risk our edge, he proclaimed, eyes on Emma in the front row. We need strength, not softness. Then he targeted Carlos, who had spoken up in support of Emma's reforms. Like this one here, pushing delays on Orion. Incompetence like that costs jobs. Carlos shrank, the room tense. Rose, seated in the back, felt the old burn rise. She stood before thinking, her voice steady but in turn soft. That's not fair. Carlos flagged real issues. Ignoring them is the real risk. Heads turned. Victor squinted. And who are you? The coffee girl? Laughter rippled from loyalists. Elena leaned forward, suspicion sharpening her gaze. Rose held her ground, defending Carlos with facts from the overlooked reports. The bug he found could expose data. Fixing it saves the company. The room murmured in agreement from the rallied staff. Victor flushed, dismissing her with a wave, but the moment risked exposure. Elena's eyes lingered on Riley too long, a frown forming. As the meeting ended, Rose slipped away, heart racing. Back home that night, Liam's update arrived, deeper traces on the threats linked to Vortex, but a new email surfaced in her secure inbox. An encrypted file from an unknown sender, internal memos showing Drake had been leaking her holding company details for months. Evidence of a larger conspiracy emerged, threads pulling toward a web far beyond Apex. The encrypted file opened like a Pandora's box, revealing memos that twisted the conspiracy into something far more sinister. Rose stared at her screens in the dim light of her office, the city skyline a blurred backdrop through the rain-streaked window. The documents detailed secret communications between Drake and Vortex executives, outlining a plan to acquire Apex not just for its assets but for its proprietary AI algorithms. Victor and Elena were named as key facilitators, promised hefty cuts in exchange for leaking code snippets and client data. The major twist hit her like a gut punch. This wasn't opportunistic theft, it was a calculated alliance with her fiercest rival to dismantle her creation from within. She forwarded the file to Liam with instructions to verify authenticity. By dawn, confirmation came, digital signatures matched, timestamps aligned with Vortex's recent mergers. Rose's empire was under siege, Apex the entry point. She couldn't delay. The board meeting Drake had called for that evening was her window. She would attend incognito, not as Rose Reese, but as a proxy observer through a planted alias on the guest list. Dressed in a nondescript pantsuit with a visitor badge reading, Consultant E. Riley, she entered the Apex Tower under cover of twilight. The high-stakes board meeting convened in the penthouse suite, a room of polished wood and panoramic views. Rose slipped in among the aides and note-takers, positioning herself in a shadowed corner with a tablet that doubled as a recording device. Drake chaired from the head, Victor and Elena at his sides, their faces masks of false composure. Gentlemen, ladies, Drake began, his shark smile in place. Apex faces uncertainty under absentee ownership. We propose a strategic partnership with Vortex to stabilize. Slides flickered, projections showing enhanced synergies, but Rose saw the code. They pitched selling Apex secrets outright, framing it as a merger. Victor detailed the AI breakthroughs, casually mentioning pre-shared samples already sent to Vortex. Elena added financials, inflated to entice, while omitting the embezzled millions. Rose gathered irrefutable proof through her tablet's silent captures, audio clips, screen grabs, even a hacked feed from the room's camera. The betrayal crystallized, they were auctioning her life's work. Meanwhile, Emma faced her own reckoning. In her office that morning, she reviewed access logs after noticing anomalies in her reform proposals. A colleague, Kent the holdout project manager, had edited her files late at night, inserting deliberate flaws to discredit her. Emma confronted him in the bullpen, her voice steady despite the hurt. "You tampered with my work." "Why?" Kent sneered, unrepentant. "Victor's orders." "You're a puppet, real leaders know how to play hard." The betrayal stung, a colleague she had once collaborated with now a saboteur. But it strengthened her resolve, turning shock into steel. Emma documented the incident, rallying her small network of supporters with renewed fire. "We won't let them win," she told Carlos over coffee, her eyes fierce. Rose's philanthropy wove through the chaos like a hidden current. Anonymously, through foundations bearing generic names, she had long aided Apex employees, scholarships for their children, emergency funds for medical crises, even relocation aid for those escaping toxic roles. That week, she authorized extra disbursements, a quiet buffer against the impending storm. It was her way of balancing the scales, born from her own past deprivations. She reflected on it during a brief lull, remembering how an anonymous grant had funded her first computer upgrade in Willow Creek. Philanthropy wasn't publicity, it was the quiet repair of broken systems, ensuring no one suffered as she had. Emotional depth built in stolen moments with Emma. Over a late afternoon intern check-in, Rose, as Riley, shared partial confidences to test the waters. "I've seen places like this before," she said softly, handing Emma a corrected report. "Leaders who crush dreams. But people like you remind me why fighting matters." Emma looked up, vulnerability in her freckled face. "Sometimes I doubt I can do this. The backstabbing, the resistance. What if I'm not enough?" Rose hesitated, then confided a sliver of truth. "I grew up with nothing, scraping by. But I learned that real strength comes from lifting others." "You're enough, Emma. More than they know." The words bridged their worlds, Emma opening up about her fears, Rose offering guidance laced with her hidden wisdom. Their bond deepened, a mentor-mentee connection laced with unspoken trust, emotions raw in the face of mounting threats. The thriller peaked that night. As Rose left the board meeting, slipping into the underground garage, her secure network alerted, a digital breach attempt on her holding companies. Firewalls held, but tracers showed Vortex origins, probing for weaknesses in her renewable energy divisions. She raced to her car, the garage's dim lights casting long shadows. Footsteps echoed behind her, deliberate. She turned a corner, heart slamming, and spotted a figure in a dark coat tailing her. A Vortex operative? Or one of Drake's? She ducked into a service stairwell, phone in hand, texting Liam, "Breach active. Tail in garage." The pursuit intensified, the figure closing in as she climbed stairs two at a time. Alarms blared in her mind, this was no mere hack but a coordinated assault on her empire. She burst onto the street level, blending into evening crowds, losing the tail in the throng. Breath ragged, she hailed a cab, the near miss underscoring the stakes. Her disguise had bought time, but the net was closing. Safe at home, Rose pieced the events, the alliance, the breach, the chase. She couldn't wait longer. Emma needed to know, to be armed for the fight. The next day, Rose arranged a private meeting, luring Emma to a neutral cafe under the guise of intern advice. Seated in a back booth, away from prying eyes, Rose removed her glasses, let her hair down, and spoke. "Emma, it's me. Rose Reese." Emma's eyes widened, shock giving way to recognition. "Riley? But, how?" Rose explained the disguise, the investigation, the betrayals uncovered. I trusted you from that first night. Your kindness in the chaos, it reminded me of what Apex should be. Tears brimmed in Emma's eyes, the revelation forging an unbreakable bond. I won't let you down. Whatever comes, we'll face it together. They planned the final takedown, expose the alliance at the next board session, use the proof to oust the traitors, secure Apex under ethical leadership. As they parted, hands clasped, Rose felt a rare warmth amid the storm. Allies found, revelations shared, the endgame began. The cafe's quiet hum faded as Rose and Emma leaned back, their plan solidifying like a blueprint etched in stone. Emma's initial disbelief had given way to a fierce determination, her hand steady now as she outlined logistics. The assembly tomorrow, she said. We'll call it an all-hands-on reforms. That's when we strike. Rose agreed, her mind already mapping the moves. Gather the evidence packets. Distribute them digitally at the start. I'll handle the reveal. They parted with a nod, allies bound by truth. That night, Rose coordinated with Liam, ensuring security teams were on standby and the board's reform votes prepped. Sleep came fitfully, her reflections on the journey a mosaic of triumphs and trials, but dawn brought clarity. The arrogant would fall today. The company-wide assembly convened at noon in the grand atrium, sunlight streaming through glass walls onto rows of chairs filled with Apex staff. Murmurs rippled as Victor and Elena took seats near the front, their postures rigid, unaware of the trap. Drake attended virtually, his face on the large screen. Emma opened the proceedings from the podium, her braid neat, voice clear. Today we discuss the future of Apex. But first, a special announcement. Rose, still as Riley Quinn, sat in the middle rows, heart steady. At Emma's signal, she stood and walked to the stage, every step measured. Whispers grew as she ascended the steps, removing her glasses midway, then pulling the pencil from her hair, letting auburn waves cascade. The transformation was deliberate, a shedding of the disguise that drew gasps like a wave crashing through the room. Victor bolted upright. What is this? Security. But Emma held up a hand. Everyone, meet Rose Reese. Our owner. The shock was palpable, a collective intake of breath. Phones emerged, but Rose raised the microphone, her presence commanding silence. I've been among you as Riley Quinn, observing, listening. What I found was a company poisoned by those who should protect it. She recounted the humiliations first, her voice even but edged. At the launch party, I was mocked, wine spilled on me like I was nothing. Clumsy nobody, you called me. Eyes turned to Victor and Elena, who shifted uncomfortably. But that was just the surface. The real corruption runs deeper. Screens lit up with evidence packets distributed via internal app, altered ledgers, leaked emails, offshore transfers. Rose detailed each, her words precise. Millions embezzled. Projects sabotaged. Employees demoted for speaking truth. And an alliance with Vortex to sell our secrets, betraying every person here. The room erupted in murmurs, then outrage. Victor stood, face crimson. Lies. This is a setup. Elena's defenses cracked next, her predatory smile gone. We built this place. You can't prove. But Rose clicked to a slide, recorded audio from the crisis meeting, their voices clear. We doctor the quarterlies, cash out. Gasps swelled. Drake's virtual feed stuttered as he protested, but the board, prepped by Liam's leaks, voted live on screen, removal motions passed unanimously. Chaos ensued. Security, briefed and waiting, moved in. 2 guards flanked Victor, who shouted obscenities as they escorted him out, his slick hair disheveled. Elena resisted, heels scraping, but a 3rd guard joined, guiding her firmly amid the stunned crowd. This isn't over, she yelled, but the doors closed on her words, the atrium echoing with the finality. In the aftermath, Emma stepped forward, her promotion now ironclad. Effective now, we'll implement the reforms, fair benefits, open innovation, no more toxicity. Applause broke out, sporadic then thunderous, from the rallied staff. She outlined changes, wellness programs reinstated, overlooked ideas prioritized, a new ethics committee formed. Subplots tied off cleanly. The rival threats from Vortex were neutralized. Rose's legal team, armed with the evidence, filed injunctions that morning, blocking any IP transfers and triggering investigations. Vortex backed off, their operatives exposed, the chase in the garage now linked to a hired investigator who turned state's evidence. The board reformed swiftly, Drake ousted, replaced by ethical nominees Rose had vetted, including a seat for employee representation. Minor characters found resolution in the shift. Carlos, the demoted tester, was reinstated to lead Orion, his bug fix implemented, earning nods of respect from former detractors. Sujin, the marketing assistant, saw her campaign proposal revived, her confidence blooming in the applause. Even Kent, the betrayer, faced quiet termination, but with a severance tied to non-disclosure, a merciful end rather than ruin. Positive shifts rippled. The designer with the lost maternity request received approval with back pay. The programmer who had considered quitting stayed, inspired by the change. Rose lingered on stage as the assembly dispersed, reflecting on the lessons carved from the ordeal. Kindness, she thought, was the true currency of power. It had drawn Emma to her side that first night, contrasted the arrogance that felled Victor and Elena. Her empire thrived not on dominance but on empathy, a principle forged in poverty's fires and tested in boardrooms. She watched employees mingle with newfound hope, conversations turning from fear to ideas, and felt a quiet vindication. Judgment by appearance had toppled the mighty, respect had rebuilt the foundation. Yet as the day wound down, lingering tension emerged. In her estate that evening, Liam called with an update. Apex is secure, but our e-commerce arm in Europe reports unusual probes. Similar signatures to Vortex, but from a new player. Could be a copycat or something bigger. Rose stared at the horizon, the city lights twinkling like distant warnings. A new challenge loomed for her broader empire, shadows hinting at threats beyond this victory. She would face it as always, veiled, vigilant, ready to test the hearts of those who wielded power. The city lights still flickered beyond Rose's office window, but the storm that had battered Apex for weeks had finally broken. She closed the encrypted report Liam had just sent, stock price up 12% in the first week after the purge, employee engagement scores climbing faster than any analyst had predicted, and allowed herself one quiet exhale. The battle was over. The healing had begun. 6 months later, Apex Dynamics looked like a different company. Emma Lark stood at the center of it all. No longer the hesitant junior developer with a borrowed blazer, she now occupied the corner office that had once belonged to Victor. The walls were lined with white boards covered in employee-suggested features instead of financial targets. The open-door policy was literal, her door had been removed entirely. On Fridays the atrium filled with voluntary demo days where anyone, from interns to senior engineers, could pitch ideas directly to her. Orion launched on schedule, its data privacy flaw fixed by Carlos's team, and the press called it the cleanest AI rollout of the decade. Investors who had once circled like vultures now begged for meetings. Rose watched it all from a distance, mentoring through encrypted calls and occasional consultant visits under new aliases. She never lingered long enough to be recognized. Emma never asked her to. Their bond had deepened into something rare, absolute trust without possession. Every quarter, Emma sent a single photograph, no text, just a snapshot of the growing team, the new rooftop garden, the restored benefits board. Rose kept them in a private folder titled Proof. Across the reformed company, stories of renewal multiplied. Carlos bought his first house with the bonus he received for the Orion save. Sujin's maternity campaign became Apex's flagship ad series and won industry awards. She returned from leave to a promotion and applause. The designer whose maternity request had vanished now led parental support initiatives that other tech firms quietly copied. Even Kent, the former saboteur, sent Emma a brief, stiff apology after landing at a smaller startup. He had enrolled in leadership coaching, paid for by the severance package Rose insisted on tying to personal improvement. Small redemptions, but redemptions all the same. The incident itself became legend. Within the industry it was simply called the wine night. New hires heard the story on day one: never judge by appearance, never mistake silence for weakness. A quiet intern had toppled titans. The tale spread beyond Apex, whispered in boardrooms and Slack channels, a cautionary myth with a moral sharp enough to cut. Rose slipped back into her veiled life with practiced ease. One week she was a courier in a Berlin logistics hub, testing warehouse conditions. The next, a substitute teacher in a Sao Paulo coding bootcamp her foundation funded. She moved like wine through her holdings, surfacing only when ethics faltered, vanishing before gratitude could form. Liam handled the logistics, she handled the truth-seeking. The toll of the disguises remained, the nights alone in hotel rooms, the ache of never being fully known, but she carried it willingly. Some burdens were the price of staying clean. Her philanthropy grew quieter and larger. A trust in Emma's name quietly paid college tuition for every Apex employee's child who qualified. Another fund, bearing no name at all, bought out predatory lenders preying on low-income neighborhoods and forgave the debts. Renewable plants in developing nations now carried plaques that read simply, "Built by those who remember hunger." Rose never attended the ribbon cuttings. She watched the live streams at 3 a.m., eyes stinging, and moved on to the next test. Personal growth came in small, fierce moments. One evening in a quiet mountain town, she sat on a cabin porch and opened a letter Emma had mailed the old-fashioned way. Inside was a single line in Emma's neat handwriting. "You taught me that power doesn't have to be loud. Thank you for trusting me with the volume." Tucked beside it was a photograph, the entire Apex staff holding a banner that read, "We are the heart you saw that night." Rose pressed the photo to her chest and, for the first time in years, let herself cry without shame. Years later, long after the wine stain had been forgotten by everyone except legend, a new generation of leaders told a different story. They spoke of the billionaire who walked among them unseen, who measured worth not in net value but in kindness shown to the least visible person in the room. Young founders built companies with open salary bands and mandatory mental health days. Venture capitalists began asking, what would Rose do, long before contracts were signed. And somewhere, always somewhere, a woman in plain clothes and flat shoes stepped off a train or into an elevator, auburn hair hidden under a cap, green eyes scanning for the next flicker of rot or spark of decency. She never gave her real name. She never needed to. Because the world now understood. True power does not announce itself with diamonds or titles. It arrives quietly, stained with wine or dust or rain. And asks only one question. When you thought no one important was watching, who did you choose to be? Rose Reese kept walking, testing hearts, rebuilding empires one invisible act at a time. The girl from Willow Creek had become the standard by which integrity itself was measured. And she was still, always, just getting started. No loose ends remained. Every betrayal had faced consequence. Every kindness had been rewarded. Every lesson had taken root. The empires, old and new, were reborn. And the woman who made it possible moved on to the next shadow. Ready, as ever, to turn on the light.